Hi, it's Katrina. Okay, so what if I told you that some of the wildest stories you've ever heard, from biblical legends to sci-fi movies, are actually coming true right now? Seriously, you won't believe what is being discovered at the bottom of the ocean. It's like a new, mind-blowing headline every week. We're talking about divers in the Red Sea finding what look exactly like ancient Egyptian chariot wheels, potentially proving a story that people have debated for thousands of years. And at the same time, a top scientist from Harvard is analyzing strange metal fragments that he's convinced are pieces of actual alien technology. And to top it all off, shipwrecks full of treasure. This isn't just history, it is a real-life adventure unfolding before our eyes. So if you want to get into the incredible stories and see the evidence for yourself, you're in the right place. Let's dive in and explore all of this together.
Chariot Wheels in the Red Sea.
Beneath the blazing Egyptian sun and beyond the touristy souvenir stands of Nuweiba Beach, there is a watery graveyard that might just blow your Sunday school memories into biblical blockbuster territory.
You remember the story of Moses, right? Being chased by Pharaoh and his Egyptian soldiers, Moses took the Israelites to the edge of the Red Sea, parted the waters, and crossed the sea floor. Then, just as the Pharaoh was catching up with his dozens of chariots, Moses reached the other side and the waters crashed back down, drowning the Pharaoh and his cronies.
It's the granddaddy of all action scenes, one that's been retold for thousands of years. But how much truth is there in the story? Well, a very special artifact might help us out here.
In 1978, disco was blaring, bell-bottoms were thriving, and Ron Wyatt was flying over the Red Sea in a rented plane like he was on a biblical treasure hunt. He was a renowned scholar who had already studied biblical sites such as Sodom and Gomorrah. South of Eilat, Israel, Ron glanced out the window and spotted Nuweiba Beach. He commented to the pilot that it looked to be the exact place described in the Bible where Moses crossed the Red Sea. The beach may be a popular tourist resort today, but in 1978, it was a little more rugged. Ron decided to land the plane and walk to the beach through the Wadi Watir Canyon. The canyon itself is straight from the Bible. Many think it was the path that Moses took as he fled the Pharaoh's soldiers. When Ron arrived on the beach, he found something weird. There was a giant stone column rising from the shore with a heavily worn inscription on it. It was illegible, probably because it was exposed to salty air for 3,500 years. On the other side of the Red Sea was an identical column. Upon this other column was a Hebrew inscription giving glory to God for delivering his people through the Red Sea. The column appears to be commemorating Moses parting the waters. Biblical scholars think it was erected by King Solomon himself as a memorial of the Exodus.
Pretty crazy, huh? But not as crazy as what Ron found next. He started poking around underwater and uncovered a gold-plated chariot wheel.
Coral had latched onto the sunken wheel like clingy exes who won't give up, preserving its shape perfectly on the sea floor. Over time, Ron and his sons found dozens of these coral-encrusted relics, including wheels with 4, 6, and even 8 spokes. I know spokes might seem unimportant, but chariot wheels with 8 spokes were historically used during Egypt's 18th dynasty, which was when Moses supposedly escaped from Egypt. And so, these wheels date to the days of Moses.
That's what you call putting 2 and 2 together. Ron Wyatt even handed one wheel hub over to Nassif Mohammed Hassan, the director of antiquities in Cairo at the time. Nassif agreed that the wheel hub came from about 1450 BC.
The evidence was looking more and more convincing. And then, Ron found horse bones and human bones along the same stretch of water. The Pharaoh's army was supposedly 250,000 strong when it was nuked by the waves. It would make sense to find a whole graveyard here, which Ron did.
You would think that with all this evidence, the parting of the Red Sea would be a scientific fact by now, but it's not. Mainstream scientists don't put much faith in that theory. Sure, maybe there are chariot wheels underwater, but could they be from a shipwreck or from a time when the Red Sea experienced a drought and the water levels dropped? Why do you think there are chariot wheels in the Red Sea? Is it evidence that the story of the Exodus is true?
Alien wreckage found by Harvard scientists.
Once upon a time, because this truly reads like a sci-fi fairy tale, a Harvard astronomer named Avi Loeb discovered alien tech at the bottom of the ocean. That's it. That's the whole discovery. But the story behind it is insane.
Loeb normally deals with black holes and the terrifying silence of the cosmos. He's a respected Harvard astronomer, a legitimate scientist who wants nothing more than to expose the secrets of the universe. So, in 2014, when a meteor crash-landed in the ocean near Papua New Guinea, Loeb rushed into action. Not because it was a random meteor, but because Loeb believed it came from another star system. Here's the thing about meteors. They typically originate from within our own galaxy, but this was an interstellar space rock, something that traveled to the Milky Way from much, much deeper in the vastness of space. Loeb claimed the meteor left behind metallic spherules on the bottom of the sea, which he went scuba diving to look for. Okay, not exactly scuba diving. He used a huge magnetic rake to scoop them off the ocean floor. Kind of like scuba diving, but different. When Loeb got his spherules, he told the world that he'd found bits of alien technology. It went from a meteor to an alien drone crashing into the ocean. Unfortunately for Loeb, the rest of the science community reviewed his work and came to a slightly different conclusion.
Turns out what Loeb found was actually a truck. Seriously, a truck. A Toyota, in fact.
When Loeb used seismology data to pinpoint where the meteor crashed, a Toyota truck was driving past the seismic station. The seismic action picked up by the instruments was nothing but a truck rumbling down the road. Normally, when you use seismology to pinpoint where a comet impacted, you use at least 3 different stations to triangulate. And that's why it's called triangulation and not guessulation.
But if Avi Loeb was chasing a Toyota and not a real alien comet, what about all those shiny metal balls he found?
Well, what Loeb did was drag a magnet across the ocean floor and pull up dozens of metallic spherules. Then he said, these are definitely interstellar, possibly alien. But when planetary scientists looked at the data, they found the complete opposite. The isotope ratios of iron matched exactly with Earth's. The spherules fell right on the terrestrial fractionation line, which is science speak for this came from your backyard. These spherules, which made headlines for months as pieces of alien debris, probably came from lateritic sandstone formations right here on Earth, which is like discovering an ancient relic and realizing it's your grandma's old garden shears. Some of the spherules weren't even spherical. They were weird compound blobs stuck together like melted M&Ms. It's the kind of thing that can happen to minerals underwater on Earth. It's not something that happens when a meteor blasts through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds. The scientific evidence seems to suggest that Avi Loeb pulled up some ordinary bits of metal from the ocean and tried to pass them off as alien objects. The fact that he's a Harvard scientist helped him break into news headlines since people took him at his word. You're probably wondering, where do we go from here? Weirdly, his blunder did spark renewed interest in planetary science, especially in tracking objects that fall to Earth and collect at the bottom of the ocean. In a roundabout way, the alien hype train helped out real scientists. Thanks to Loeb freaking everyone out with his claims of alien debris, scientists are now looking for real celestial trash under the sea.
Will they ever find interstellar meteorites or alien artifacts? Maybe. Until then, let's all take a deep breath, keep the magnetic rakes ready, and leave the science to people who can tell the difference between a meteor and a muffler. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time. I want to give a big thank you to Wayne McMaster for the super thanks. It really means a lot, and we wouldn't be here without you. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family.
A shipwreck and a lost treasure. Shipwrecks, treasure, storms, and possibly some ancient recycling. This maritime fable has it all. In 1964, a French diving enthusiast named André Bouscarat was poking around the waters of Cap d'Agde in southwest France when he stumbled onto something incredible. He found a massive underwater scatter of ancient metal. These weren't the same kinds of metal spherules that Avi Loeb scraped out of the dirt. These were copper ingots in the hundreds. There were over 1,700 bronze artifacts recovered, including weapons and jewelry. All these amazing relics were spread over a debris field about the size of a tennis court.
How would you like to be at the bottom of the sea with a metal detector collecting treasure from 2,500 years ago? Sounds pretty awesome, right?
The loot as a collection became known as the Rochellon treasure, and to this day, no one knows how it found its way to the bottom of the sea. It's one of France's greatest maritime mysteries.
There are plenty of theories. Some think the treasure is from a shipwreck, and others say it came from a ritual deposit dumped into the water on purpose. Then again, could we be looking at an ancient garage sale gone horribly wrong? Shipwreck? Ritual deposit?
The collection includes bracelets, belt clasps, brooches, axes, and spears, lots of stuff that was not your standard beach picnic gear. The whole cache dates to around 600 BC, right in the juicy part of the Iron Age. But the artifacts appear to be from different cultures. Some artifacts seem Etruscan, others Phoenician, some local Gallic. The copper came from southern Spain, the brooches from Catalonia, other goods from deep inside what is now France. It's as if someone tried to pack an entire Mediterranean flea market into a single boat.
The most popular theory is shipwreck. The site's size and depth fit with what you'd expect from a sunken vessel. And given how stormy the Mediterranean can be, it wouldn't be shocking if an ancient trading ship overloaded with goodies got slammed by bad weather and went down.
But there's a catch. You should know by now, there's always a catch. Archaeologists have found a ton of treasure and not a single piece of a ship. No wood, no wine jugs, nothing you'd expect from a typical wreck. It's like finding the contents of a suitcase spilled outside a bus station without the suitcase or the traveler. Another possibility is the whole ritual deposit thing. Ancient marine sanctuaries were a big deal in the Iron Age. People would sail to a specific spot, throw some copper or bronze into the water as a gift for the gods, and then be on their way. This might be one of those spots.
The Rochellon treasure might never give up its secrets. If the loot is from a shipwreck, there's probably one really angry ghost still upset about losing all that precious metal. If you were going to leave an offering for Poseidon in the sea, what would you toss in?
Pirate ships that were actually slave ships.
For decades, the locals in Cahuita National Park in Costa Rica thought they had something juicy on their hands. Two gnarly old pirate shipwrecks straight out of the Pirates of the Caribbean. The kind of wrecks you imagine are filled with stolen doubloons, rum barrels, and Johnny Depp's eyeliner stash. But this was wrong. The sunken ships weren't pirate vessels at all. They were Danish slave ships.
Not exactly the swashbuckling treasure tale everyone was hoping for. History has just taken a very dark and dismal turn.
What's crazy is that it all started with some bricks. In 2015, archaeologists poking around the wrecks found bright yellow bricks, which sounds more Lego movie than maritime mystery.
They were Flensburg bricks, the artisanal sourdough of 18th century Danish construction. These things were only made in very specific parts of Denmark and its colonies, which raised the question, what the heck were Danish building supplies doing in a Costa Rican shipwreck? Only when the identities of the ships were revealed did this question get answered. Scientists figured out the boats are the Fredericus Quartus and the Christianus Quintus. Sounds like a failed Roman boy band, but these were the real names of real slave ships. They were operated by the Danish West India Company in the early 1700s. Back then, Denmark wasn't exactly a global superpower, but they did have a weirdly heavy stake in the transatlantic slave trade. Between the mid-1600s and early 1800s, Denmark helped traffic over 120,000 enslaved Africans. These two ships left Ghana in 1710 with around 800 people on board, most of them enslaved. The Fredericus Quartus, in particular, had a harrowing history because a rebellion broke out on board. The enslaved people tried to take back their freedom. The crew responded by decapitating their leader. Things only got worse for everyone on board. The ships lost their way trying to reach St. Thomas. Supplies ran low. The crew, in true 1700s panic mode, threatened mutiny unless the enslaved people were released. But don't start clapping yet. The Dutch sailors wanted the enslaved humans thrown overboard so that they would have more food for themselves. They weren't trying to free them out of the goodness of their souls. Eventually, around 600 enslaved people made it to Costa Rica's shores, which may be the only part of this story with a hint of hope. The Fredericus Quartus caught fire and burned. The Christianus Quintus had its anchor rope cut and was smashed to bits by the surf. The wrecks were lost until 2023. A team of Danish marine archaeologists, including Andreas Kallmeyer Blasch and David Gregory, suited up and dove to the bottom of the Costa Rican coast. They found wooden timbers from Europe. Then they used dendrochronology, aka tree ring dating, to learn the trees were cut down between 1690 and 1695. Everything matched up perfectly. But then how did these ships get mistaken for pirate vessels in the first place? Honestly, it was an easy mistake. The ships were wrecked, the timbers burned. It was easy to mislabel them as pirate ships. It was also probably easier to think of them as pirate ships rather than as brutal, heinous slave ships. Beyond the drama, this discovery matters a lot. It connects real people to real places. The wrecks are historical witnesses to Denmark's participation in the slave trade, something not as well known as British or Portuguese involvement, but just as real. As for Costa Rica, it's part of their local history too. The descendants of those 600 survivors might still live in the region. How do you think they feel knowing that these ships have been identified after so long? The acid zone. Do not enter. There is a place in the ocean that is so acidic, if you enter it, I assure you that your skin will melt off the bone. It's like diving into a pool of sulfuric acid. Heck, it's like diving into an active volcano. 13,000 feet beneath the surface, where the water is cold, dark, and the pressure could squish a car like a soda can, a creeping acidic zone is expanding upward. And for marine creatures who make their homes in chalky shells and coral skeletons, it is the worst eviction notice imaginable. Imagine for a second that you're a tiny marine snail hanging out on the seafloor, minding your own business, wearing your best calcium carbonate outfit. Then suddenly, the water around you starts dissolving your house. That is what's going on in the deep sea right now. Due to rising CO2 levels from burning fossil fuels, the ocean is becoming more acidic. That's just a fact. And it's happening everywhere, from the surface all the way down to the abyss. Since the pre-industrial era, the acidic transition zone where calcium carbonate starts to break down has climbed about 328 feet, and it's not stopping. Scientists say this zone of acid death could rise several hundred more feet in the next few decades. That's bad news for creatures with shells and skeletons. As the zone rises, anything caught within it is cooked. Let me break down the ocean's acid layer cake so that it makes more sense. There is a line known as the calcite saturation depth. Anything above the line is cool. And then there's the border zone where shells begin to dissolve. Below the warning zone is the calcite compensation depth, in which all shells are dissolved by the intense acid. Here's a shocking fact to blow your mind. Right now, this acid-soaked underworld covers 41% of the ocean floor. Pretty wild, huh? Nearly half the ocean floor is a death trap. But as the calcite compensation depth rises, it's set to cover a whopping 51% of the global ocean floor. Nearly half of our world's salty seas will become uninhabitable for any animal with a shell. It's worse than that. As surface waters warm, marine life is getting crunched between a heating ceiling and a dissolving floor. On the bottom is a layer of dissolving acid, and at the surface is superheated water that is killing off marine life. It's the oceanic equivalent of living in an apartment with a leaky roof and a collapsing foundation, and a volcano exploding on top of that. Despite how massive and planet-wide this problem is, scientists only published the first study showing the biological effects of calcite compensation depth just last year. All this time, we've been slowly turning the bottom half of the ocean into acidic soup, and we're only now starting to realize what that means for marine ecosystems. I don't want to be a downer, but this is an alarming discovery. You could live to see the oceans turn into giant boiling acid baths, and that is a scary future. Pharaonic secrets in the Nile. Below the calm waters of the Nile, beneath the tourist boats and hungry crocodiles, a team of archaeologists recently found something wild. Carvings, inscriptions, and ancient sculptures of pharaohs have been hiding in plain sight for 60 years. Lost all because of that one time humans flooded Egypt on purpose. In the 1960s, Egypt decided to build the Aswan High Dam.
It was a colossal project that was supposed to tame the Nile's yearly flooding tantrums. And it worked. It also, unfortunately, submerged entire regions, displaced thousands of people, and gave Egyptian artifacts a surprise one-way ticket to the bottom of the river. Now, decades later, a brave team of archaeologists went scuba diving in the Nile to rediscover those lost treasures. What they found is nothing short of amazing. In the murky river at the very bottom, the divers uncovered carvings of pharaohs and royal inscriptions. And not just a few carvings either. There were images of Amenhotep III, Thutmose IV, Psamtik II, and Apis. Think of how creepy it must be floating through the murky darkness with these stone-cold eyes of dead pharaohs leering at you. The team from Egypt's Sunken Archaeology Department was amazed with what they found. They called in scientists from Paul Valéry Montpellier University to help catalog everything. With underwater scans, high-res photography, and detailed archaeological drawings, they managed to document the carvings in stunning detail. This isn't just cool because, ancient pharaohs underwater. It's historically massive. These discoveries could rewrite parts of what historians know about southern Egypt, how it was ruled, and what might still be hiding in the river like a historical Loch Ness monster. In the future, there will definitely be more underwater treasure hunts. Some experts believe there's just as much history lost under the Nile as there is lost under the Egyptian sands. What do you think about that? Underwater UFO changes everything. Something fishy is going on. A Navy admiral has announced that underwater UFOs might be a bigger problem than anyone had anticipated. Forget shark attacks. You need to keep a lookout for UFO attacks. Right off the coast of San Diego on a perfectly normal day in 2019, something decidedly not normal slipped into the scene. A mysterious object zipped through the sky, plunged into the ocean like a nose-diving dolphin with a jet engine, and vanished. The most shocking part is that the UFO was caught on video, and it's been confirmed by the Pentagon, the real Pentagon. Meet Tim Gallaudet, former Rear Admiral, oceanographer, and the kind of guy you want with you on a dive. Gallaudet recently told the news that these bizarre underwater crafts deserve serious scientific study and government attention. He's not exactly subtle about the stakes either. I believe the exact words he used were world-changing. Gallaudet's report focuses on the infamous 2019 USS Omaha video, the one leaked to filmmaker Jeremy Corbell and later verified by the Pentagon as authentic military footage. Gallaudet wrote that credible observers and high-tech military sensors have documented craft that move in ways that no human tech should. For example, sprinting from air to sea without breaking a sweat like a flying toaster doing a cannonball into the ocean, and disappearing like Houdini with gills. And what's the Department of Defense doing? Apparently not enough. Gallaudet's not thrilled that USOs, unidentified submerged objects, are cruising into American waters like they are on vacation, and nobody is hitting the panic button. It's a sign, he said, that the government isn't telling us everything it knows. Okay, but who is really shocked by that? Scott Christensen, director at the U.S. Naval Institute, noted in a 2022 editorial that while UFOs haven't dinged a single plane, USOs and undersea oddities have historically given the Navy way more headaches. Sonar anomalies, near misses with subs. The public doesn't know it, but swimming saucers are a major issue. The ocean has always been like Earth's basement. Dark, unorganized, full of weird stuff, hiding more secrets than your search history. And now we have to deal with flying saucers taking to the seas. Gallaudet isn't saying we need to launch torpedoes at mystery blobs in the ocean. He is saying we need to get our scientific act together as a species. Maybe we should stop arguing about aliens on Reddit and start investing in some serious ocean science. The next big discovery might not come from a telescope looking at stars. It might come from a sonar ping bouncing off whatever the heck just dove into the Pacific and didn't bother leaving a ripple. If that's enough to freak you out, you better subscribe to the channel so that I can freak you out with these kinds of mysteries every day. The flooded caves of ancient Sicily. Before Sicily was serving up cannoli and mafia movie tropes, it was doing something even more impressive by hosting early Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens who hung out in some less than comfortable caves. According to a new study, archaeologists dove into southern Sicily's coastal and underwater caves and came back with clues about the island's first human residents. The team was led by Ilaria Patania, an archaeologist and part-time historical detective. Patania said she is interested in learning how humans lived in marginal environments, such as seaside caves. Scholars generally agree that human beings reached the island of Sicily 16,000 years after the last glacial maximum, but humans were already in places like Siberia 15,000 years earlier. Researchers want to know why they didn't go to Sicily, even though it's 2 miles off the toe of Italy's boot. Did the sea scare them? Did they not have the right snacks? Freaked out by whirlpools? Why not make the journey earlier? Probably because it was terrifying. Seriously, crossing to Sicily was no joke. The Straits of Messina, between Sicily and the mainland, is infamous as a death trap. Ancient Greek sailors said it was haunted by sea monsters. Today, it's still a challenge. Many modern migrants attempt the same route to reach Italy, and sadly, some don't make it. Patania's team surveyed 25 cave and rock shelter sites, many of which were found decades ago, but left to gather dust. They also uncovered 3 brand new sites thanks to some good old-fashioned underwater detective work. At one promising site, Carugi, near Sicily's southern tip, researchers found fossil teeth from a European wild donkey, stone tools, and evidence of a possible land bridge connecting Sicily to Malta. Meanwhile, in a nearby cave called Campolato, they found signs of sea level changes and an earthquake. The team can now piece together what early humans faced while trying to settle Sicily. There were climate swings, tectonic chaos, and maybe even volcanoes. But people braved the brutal Strait of Messina to reach Sicily and make their homes in seaside caves that are now flooded. I guess they really wanted to be the first Sicilians. Maybe the Godfather had some of this prehistoric blood in his veins. Patania, who grew up in Sicily and whose grandfather was a fisherman, is currently training the Italian Navy's Special Dive Team to spot submerged archaeological sites. Italy's Navy usually hunts for unexploded World War II bombs, but now they'll also be helping trace prehistoric human migration. I bet those seaside caves had amazing views. Our mysterious ancient cousins. If you think your family reunions are awkward, wait until you hear about Penghu 1, the long-lost cousin from 160,000 years ago who turned up under the sea, had weird teeth, and may or may not have shared snacks with Neanderthals. In 2010, a fishing boat was doing its thing off the coast of Taiwan when it accidentally scooped up a fossilized jawbone from the bottom of the ocean. Of all the things to randomly find while deep-sea trawling, a prehistoric jawbone has to be one of the weirdest. Scientists took one look at this bone and knew it wasn't from a modern human. They also knew it wasn't from a Neanderthal. So, who did it belong to? The fossilized bone is from a Denisovan, humanity's mysterious branch on the evolutionary tree that's been ghosting us for the last 50,000 years. The jawbone, dubbed Penghu 1, which I'm aware sounds like a Star Wars droid, was chilling at what used to be a land bridge between China and Taiwan. When it comes to human fossils, Denisovan samples are incredibly rare. Most of what scientists know about them comes from a single pinky bone found in a Siberian cave. Getting a full jawbone was a jackpot discovery. The fact a fishing boat reeled it in is the icing on the cake. But who were these strange cousins of ours? Scientists say the Denisovans were elusive, brooding, and genetically influential. They lived as far north as Siberia and as far south as Taiwan. They were a distinct human species, similar to Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, but genetically unique. Since the species was only discovered 15 years ago, there's still a lot scientists need to learn. Their DNA has been found inside of modern humans, so we still carry their genetic memory within us. But scientists want to know more. Like, when did our species overlap? Why did Denisovans go extinct? How smart were they? There's way more questions than answers. A Neolithic canoe crash. Before shipwrecks, there were canoe crashes. They happened so long ago that finding evidence of them is next to impossible, which makes what I'm about to tell you not only unique, but incredibly rare. I take you now to Capri, Italy, famous for its dreamy views, designer sunglasses, and overpriced gelato. Divers off the coast of Capri just stumbled upon a collection of ancient obsidian artifacts. It was found near a sea cave called the Grotta Bianca, 100 feet under the Mediterranean. Archaeologists are now losing their minds. The discovery was made by a group of Naples police divers. The obsidian artifacts are big, heavy, processed chunks of volcanic glass, some weighing over 17 pounds. It might just be beach trash to the uninitiated, but to people like us, who know better, these shards of obsidian are Neolithic era technology. Obsidian was the premium cutting tool of the Stone Age. It was the sham wow of the Old World. Before bronze, before iron, if you wanted to slice, dice, or stab something with surgical precision, obsidian was your best friend. Being so important, obsidian was also valuable. So why would Neolithic humans leave behind a stash of valuable obsidian to be swallowed by the sea? The prevailing theory right now is that the obsidian is from a canoe crash, a sunken Stone Age vessel. If that is what happened, this is a discovery to end all discoveries. A Stone Age shipwreck is unheard of. Sadly, no boat has been found. No planks, no paddles, no prehistoric anchor with a note saying made in 6000 BC. So far, just a bunch of chunky obsidian blocks on a rocky seabed. It's either a most underrated Neolithic treasure chest or someone messed up their delivery route. The boat doesn't really need to be found though, because it was almost definitely destroyed many centuries ago. It was probably made from perishable wood, which the Mediterranean Sea loves to destroy with the help of its personal wood-eating gremlins, aka Terrero Navalis, aka naval shipworms. They gobble up every piece of wood that floats to the bottom of the Mediterranean. Unless the canoe sank fast and got buried in sand, the odds of finding even a soggy splinter are slim to none. So what do you think?
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. Wat Tilok Aram. Submerged at the bottom of a lake in northern Thailand is a 500-year-old temple known as Wat Tilok Aram. Thanks to a stone inscription at the temple, we know the structure was built around 1476 at the behest of King Tilok Karad. The mighty king commanded the ruler of a much smaller kingdom to build the temple as an offering to his majesty. Tilok Karad was part of the Megrai dynasty, which ruled northern Thailand between the 13th and 18th centuries. The temple stood strong for almost 5 centuries until a modern irrigation project ruined it. In 1939, the project created an artificial lake, flooding the temple in the process along with 10 other ancient sites. The government didn't care about the history, only about completing their business. Wat Tilok Aram now sits underneath the surface of the lake, surrounded on all sides by thriving rice fields. As sad as it is to lose history, the rice fields do help to feed huge numbers of people. Plus, the artificial lake has become one of the biggest freshwater fish habitats in Thailand. The whole area is now one of the most important wetlands the country has. If you want to see the lost temple and other pieces of sunken history, all you have to do is strap on a diving suit and swim to the bottom. World's largest underwater cave. Sak Aktun has officially been announced as the longest underwater cave system in the world. It's so large that it discharges a seemingly endless supply of fresh water directly into the Caribbean Sea and connects sunken caves and underwater tunnels all across Mexico's Quintana Roo. There are dozens of entrances to the Sak Aktun underwater system in the form of cenotes. Many are deep in the jungle, and others are close enough to society that they are frequently visited by tourists. The longest underwater cave on the planet extends for over 500 miles, with an average depth across the whole system of over 60 feet. It drops down some places to almost 400 feet. Its roof has collapsed in so many places that the passages can be entered through 220 different cenotes. But what's the point of such a huge underwater world? What's down in Sak Aktun other than endless passages of water? Marine archaeologists have found priceless treasures from our ancient past. They have discovered the bones of long extinct animals and even human remains left behind from before the days of the Maya civilization. The caves have not always been flooded and may have once been traversed by some of the first humans to live in the area. In one of these sunken passages, researchers uncovered the bones of a woman from 13,600 years ago.
We still have no clue what her skeleton was doing down there by itself in the watery cavern. And now for number 8. But first, it's shout-out time! I want to say a big thank you to Jennifer McNeil and Angela Hernandez for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about mysterious places. Kaindi Lake's Ghost Forest. Kaindi Lake can be found in the wilderness of Kazakhstan. It's in a remote and serenely peaceful part of the Central Asian country, a place covered in steep mountains and beautiful alpine forests. A landslide that took place here at the lake in 1911 created an underwater forest the likes of which you have never seen before. It all started with an earthquake. The quake caused the Tian Shan Mountains to shake and quiver, triggering a landslide. The landslide blocked a gorge between the mountains, creating a natural dam. Rainfall eventually filled the area since there was nowhere for the water to go, submerging a forest of pristine spruce trees. The trees are dead, but still standing strong underneath the surface of the lake. The lake is fairly difficult to reach and would require some serious adventuring. But those who do visit the lake say the dead spruce trees are like the masts of long-dead pirate ships, or like the ghostly spears of giants sticking up through the water. It's made even creepier in the dead of winter, or when a ghoulish fog rolls through the area. The water is so clear thanks to the lack of pollution that you can see all the way to the bottom, to where the roots of the trees once drowned. The Sunken Cemetery. There is a sunken cemetery in the Philippines unlike any other cemetery in the world. There are no flowers or gravestones here to mark where the citizens of Katarman were once laid to rest. Instead, the only thing to even suggest there is a graveyard here is a giant cross built on a small platform in the water. The story of how the cemetery sank goes back to the 1870s. A volcano nearby erupted in 1871, then continued erupting until 1875. This seemingly endless eruption created Mount Vulcan. The eruption caused such geographical chaos that the cemetery and the city beside it sank beneath sea level. The cemetery was totally swallowed by the ocean, and many parts of the town itself were gobbled up by the water. By the time the eruption stopped, a new mountain had grown out of the sea to be almost 2,000 feet tall. The town of Katarman was obliterated, with most of it beneath the sea. Today, the only things that survive from the old city are the ruins of an old Spanish church and a bell tower. Following the loss of the city and its cemetery, the Philippine government commissioned a huge cross to be built on a tall concrete platform. It now stands as the only reminder that there were human beings buried here. But the truth is that after over a century of being buried underneath the water, the original inhabitants of the cemetery have probably been released from their graves and carried into the ocean on the tide. Lost Levantine Village. Underwater excavations in the Mediterranean Sea have revealed an underwater well from 7,500 years ago. The water well appears to be part of a lost Levantine village, a place where a Neolithic society lived before the whole area was flooded. Maritime archaeologist Jonathan Benjamin was one of the members of the team who made the discovery. He and his colleagues discovered the remains of the village 15 feet underwater off the coast of Israel. Thousands of years ago, the well likely supplied fresh water to the civilization living on the shore. Water wells, as surprising as it may sound, are some of the most coveted things that can be found at an archaeological site. That's because, according to Jonathan, once the well ran dry, people used them as garbage cans. People just threw all their trash into these huge wells that they used to drink out of, giving archaeologists a lot of stuff to investigate. Researchers can find food remains, plant fires, broken tools, and other things to help shed light on prehistoric societies. These garbage dumps can reveal what people ate, how they hunted, and how they even operated as a community. The only issue here is that the well is completely submerged by water. Archaeologists have their work cut out for them, as they have to dig up thousands of years of trash from a pit in the sea. The City of R'lyeh. Author H.P. Lovecraft was the genius behind the tale of the Necronomicon, the great cosmic beast known as Cthulhu, and many other outrageous ideas. His books in the early 1900s spawned an entire genre of cosmic horror. In his books, Lovecraft wrote of the lost city by the name of R'lyeh, or however you want to call it, which he said was located somewhere in the southern Pacific Ocean. The city's earliest appearance was in the short story The Call of Cthulhu, and was said to be the prison of the mighty entity known as Cthulhu. It was accidentally discovered by a Norwegian sailor who came across ancient masonry and the ruins of a lost civilization, along with the monster itself slumbering in its prison. And while this obviously sounds like science fiction, what if Lovecraft was really onto something? In the fictional account, Lovecraft gives exact coordinates to the location of the city. Scientists have recently discovered an entirely new continent in the Pacific Ocean at the coordinates where the city of R'lyeh is supposed to be. The continent is 1.74 million square miles and 94% submerged beneath the ocean. It pokes out of the water's surface only at its highest point, looking like little islands. Scientists say the continent broke away from Australia 80 million years ago, then gradually sank. And while nobody has found the remains of a lost city or the prison of a monumental nightmare from outer space yet, who's to say it isn't down there somewhere, lost beneath the waves? Any Lovecraft fans out there? How do you pronounce his stuff? Let me know in the comments. The underwater waterfall. There is a spectacular underwater waterfall in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's a sight to behold, and something so mind-bending you might question reality when you see it. It's like looking at Niagara Falls while totally submerged beneath the ocean. The truth is that it's an extremely beautiful optical illusion. The underwater waterfall can be found right on the edge of the Republic of Mauritius, a small island country located 1,200 miles from Africa. There are about 1.3 million people living here, a mix of immigrants from India, China, South Africa, and England. The island happens to be situated on a chunk of ocean shelf rising steeply from the ocean floor. Right at the edge of the island is a gradual slope that leads to an abrupt drop 2.5 miles to the floor of the ocean. If there was no water here, it would be like standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, only with an even bigger drop. The waterfall that has blown so many minds is the result of sand and silt sliding down the slope and then dropping suddenly into the black abyss. Scientists explain it as an optical illusion. The sand and silt sliding down the slope make it look as though there is a waterfall plummeting down into the empty chasm. Would you like to see this waterfall in person? Or have you already? Let me know in the comments. The Goderich Salt Mine. The Goderich Salt Mine in Ontario, Canada is entirely underwater. It is the largest underground salt mine in the world, and yet you can drive a boat over top of it. The mine is hidden 1,800 feet beneath the watery surface of Lake Huron. It's as deep as the CN Tower in Toronto is tall. The CN Tower was the tallest structure in the world up until the completion of the Burj Khalifa in 2007. The salt mine has been in operation since 1959. Deep underneath the lake, enough salt is produced to supply North America with the salt used for keeping roads free of snow and ice in the winter. That's a lot of salt. The salt is shipped to communities all around the Great Lakes and beyond. But you may be wondering why the operation is conducted beneath the lake. The truth is that the Goderich plant opened in 1867 after a failed search for oil. The miners didn't find oil, but they did find an unimaginably vast bed of rock salt underneath the city of Goderich and stretching beneath the lake. It's fairly common for mining operations to continue expanding, even drilling off the coast to create mines under the ocean, or in this case, under Lake Huron, the god of the seas. There is a hugely impressive statue of everyone's favorite sea god just off the coast of San Andres in the Caribbean. I'm talking, of course, about Poseidon, brother of Zeus and lord of the seven seas. He was known as Neptune to the Romans, but was essentially the same deity. He wields his trident, his daughters are the sea nymphs, and sailors worshipped him for thousands of years. Sailors and fishermen alike would visit the many temples dedicated to Poseidon throughout the Mediterranean, hoping their prayers and sacrifices would keep them safe on their next voyage. But what in the world is Poseidon doing in the Caribbean? The massive statue of the sea god has been sitting on the seabed since 2012. It's a piece of art that was made by Mario Hoyos entirely out of environmentally friendly materials. Ever since he placed the statue at the bottom of the ocean, divers have been flocking here to take selfies with mighty Poseidon, the sunken Stonehenge. There are a lot of archaeological sites in the world that have been dubbed Sunken Stonehenge. One such place is located at the bottom of Lake Michigan, and there is another one submerged off the coast of Spain. But researchers also discovered a submerged Neolithic stone circle in Orkney, Scotland. Archaeologists were carrying out underwater surveys, doing things like remote sensing and seismic profiling, when they accidentally discovered a sunken stone circle. It looks like Stonehenge, only totally submerged. Researchers completing surveys of the Bay of Firth believe the stone circle was likely eaten by the sea about 4,000 years ago. That was when sea levels rose sharply, swallowing huge swaths of coastline in Britain. There was even a circular mound about 120 feet wide found near the remains of the stone circle. They believe the mound may have been a prehistoric chambered tomb, likely the resting place of an extremely important person. Archaeologist Caroline Wickham-Jones with Aberdeen University says there were many Neolithic settlements here. Caroline says many hunter-gatherer settlements were submerged in northern Scotland at the same time. In fact, these sunken ruins in Orkney have no parallel anywhere else in the UK. This is a totally unique landscape of a time before modern civilization, when newly formed societies were just starting to create substantial structures. Unfortunately for the settlers here, their structures were all washed away by the rising tides. Upon completing the marine survey, scientists were able to see the changes that took place starting about 10,000 years ago. Much of the area was dry land, but was gradually flooded. This was probably the result of the Ice Age coming to an end. By about 2000 BC, the ocean had filled most low-lying areas, driving prehistoric humans deeper inland. Thanks for watching! Which of these awesome underwater places would you be brave enough to explore by yourself? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and come back soon. Bye!